Hey man, there comes a point in your evolution as a man where you realize that most of your words, especially the ones said in desperation, over clarification, or emotional panic, are actually hurting your value, not raising it. You learn that explaining yourself over and over again isn't communication, it's insecurity dressed up as honesty. And when it comes to women, here's the truth. Most men never hear, the more you try to explain your every move, the less she respects you. Because she doesn't need your reasoning, she needs your certainty. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you stop trying to win her understanding, and you start commanding her attention. Most men have been conditioned to believe that if a woman's confused, uncertain, or pulling away, it's their job to fix it with words. They write essays through text. They try to walk her through every feeling they've ever had. They try to soften every edge in their decisions so they don't come off too cold, too distant, too difficult. But what they don't see is that every explanation is a crack in their frame. Every time you try to justify why you pulled back, or why you stood your ground, or why you didn't respond immediately, you're telling her one thing: you're seeking her emotional permission to stand in your truth. And brother, the moment she senses that you need her to validate your choices is the moment she stops feeling drawn to you. Because feminine energy doesn't chase men it fully understands, it chases men it respects. And respect doesn't come from how well you explain yourself, it comes from how deeply you live what you believe. When you make a decision and you don't feel the need to justify it, that tells her, I've thought this through, I've felt this fully, and I don't need you to like it for me to own it. That kind of quiet conviction, it pulls her closer, even when she acts like it pushes her away. Explaining is often a man's way of begging not to be misunderstood, but the man who truly holds frame knows that being misunderstood is a cost of leadership. You will make decisions she doesn't like, you will move in ways she questions, you will say no when she expects a yes, and you'll do all of that without offering a paragraph. Because your job as a man isn't to ease her confusion, it's to be so rooted in your direction that she either adapts to your pace or reveals that she's not ready to walk beside you. The reason she starts chasing when you stop explaining isn't because you become mean, it's because you become grounded. And grounding is magnetic. It creates polarity. It makes her feel that she has to move towards you, to understand you, not just sit back and wait for you to open your chest and pour out every vulnerable thought in your head. Mystery, when it's authentic, isn't manipulation, it's discipline. You say less, you move in silence, you offer presence, not persuasion. And that silence, that gap between your actions and your words, that's where her curiosity is born. Curiosity turns into desire when there's no apology attached to your truth. You don't explain why you didn't reply in an hour. You don't explain why you didn't respond to her passive-aggressive comment. You don't explain why you didn't drop everything to see her. You just don't. And she feels the absence. And in that absence, she starts to wonder. She starts checking her tone. She replays her own actions. Because now, she realizes this man doesn't give energy to things that waste his peace. That shift from trying to control the narrative to letting her feel the consequence, that's what triggers the chase. When a woman feels you pulling back with no drama, no words, no chase, just clean, measured distance, she feels tension, not emotional punishment, not toxic detachment, just a man who values his time too much to argue over access to him. And that kind of tension doesn't push her away, it wakes her up, because most men will jump through hoops to be understood. You just nod and move on. And that stillness, that refusal to over-explain, that becomes the new center of her focus, because now you're no longer predictable. Women don't crave emotional performance. They crave emotional leadership, and leadership doesn't explain itself, it demonstrates through action. When you say no and don't add a footnote, when you walk away without a speech, when you say what you said once and then shut up, you're not being dismissive, you're being firm. And firmness is rare, because firmness comes from not needing to be liked. And the man who doesn't need to be liked becomes the man she starts chasing, not because he's playing games, but because he's playing at a higher frequency. Most importantly, when you stop explaining, you force her to meet you where you stand. You're not bending, you're not hand-holding her through your masculine decisions, you're not softening your boundaries just because she questions them. You've drawn the line, and now she has to decide how she wants to respond. And that's where real desire lives, not in comfort but in contrast. when she realizes that your silence isn't passive aggression, it's a boundary wrapped in peace, she'll either fall in line or fall away. But either way, you don't chase either outcome. Even when she confronts you, why did you do that? Why are you being distant? Why didn't you say anything? You don't over-engage. You might give a calm, grounded answer, or you might just say, "That's how I felt like moving." That's it. You don't over-apologize. You don't shrink. You don't wrap it in fluff, because now she's seeing you in your masculine edge. Not reactive, not emotional, just still. Stillness is your weapon. Stillness is your filter. And when you stop explaining and stay still, she starts making the moves you used to make. When you stop explaining yourself, something powerful happens inside you first. You stop performing. You stop asking for emotional permission to lead your life the way you want to lead it. You stop second-guessing whether your boundaries are too harsh or your silence too cold. And instead of trying to make her feel comfortable with your standards, you become comfortable with her discomfort. Not because you're cruel, but because growth always comes with tension. And if a woman is going to be part of your world, she needs to learn how to sit in that tension without running. Because the man who stands in truth, without softening it to be liked, becomes the kind of man she starts chasing, because she knows most men can't hold that edge. And here's the thing, your value doesn't live in how much you explain. It lives in how little you need to. It lives in your restraint, in your presence, in the way you say more with your energy than with your words. The more you talk, the more she gets used to decoding you. But the moment you go still, the moment you stop explaining where you went, what you feel, why you're not as available, that's when she gets curious. That's when she starts filling in the blanks. And what she imagines always has more emotional impact than what you could have said anyway. Mystery creates momentum. Stillness creates gravity. A man who's always explaining himself becomes easy to control. He's trying to please, trying to be liked, trying to ease tension before it even arises. But the man who doesn't explain, he becomes the tension. He becomes the one who decides when things are worth speaking about and when they're not. He's not holding back because he's cold. He's holding back because he's not interested in unnecessary noise. That kind of mental discipline is rare, and that rarity is what pulls her in. Because now, your energy is felt, not managed. You don't explain your value, you embody it. If she can't see it, she's not meant for it. That's it. There's no need to pitch yourself like a product. No need to convince her that you're loyal, disciplined, high value, intentional. You live it. You breathe it. And if that's not enough for her, you don't try harder. You just step back. And in that step back, she sees the strength most men don't have. Because most men will beg to be understood. You, on the other hand, you let the silence do the talking. And that's the voice she hears loudest when you're gone. When a woman doesn't hear from you after she expected a reaction and gets nothing, that silence becomes the mirror. She has to face her own tone, her own energy, her own inconsistencies. And because you didn't try to explain or fix it, she has nothing to fight against. No words to twist, no emotion to manipulate. You left the space still, and now she has to meet herself in it. That kind of self-reflection is powerful, and the man who can create that effect by saying nothing, that's the man she starts respecting on a deeper level than she expected. Even in relationships, this applies. You don't owe your woman a play-by-play of every single decision you make. Not because you're hiding something, but because you're leading. You don't need her to co-sign your every move. You include her when it matters. You invite her into your mission, but you don't report to her like she's your boss. That's not love, that's submission. And women don't respect submission from men. They respect structure. And when you stop explaining and start just moving with clarity and calmness, she stops questioning and starts following. A man who constantly explains becomes predictable. He's always 2 steps behind the emotional moment, trying to correct, clarify, and cushion. But the man who moves in silence, who doesn't justify why he fell back, who doesn't over-explain why he said no, who doesn't argue when his energy isn't matched, he becomes a man she studies, because now she has to earn another opportunity to understand him. He's not withholding, he's selective. And that selectiveness, it doesn't confuse her, it challenges her. And the right woman will always rise when the energy challenges her, instead of catering to her. Sometimes the most masculine thing you can do is to say something once, and then never say it again. You don't repeat boundaries, You don't re-explain expectations. You don't debate things that are already clear. She either aligns with it or she doesn't. And when she realizes you won't repeat yourself just to be kept, she starts listening more closely the first time. That's how respect is built. Not by talking more, but by saying less. That means more. That's how your word becomes law. Not through volume, but through weight. So when you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, am I saying this to lead or to be liked? Because when you speak from fear of being misunderstood, you abandon your frame. But when you speak from calm truth, and then let that truth hang in the air without chasing approval, that's when your presence speaks loudest. And the women around you, whether they admit it or not, feel the difference. One version is seeking reassurance. The other is offering leadership. So remember this, man, you don't need to explain why you walk away, why you don't respond right away, why you expect better, why you don't tolerate chaos. You just do it with clarity, with silence, with certainty. Because when you stop explaining yourself, you stop needing her permission to lead. And that's when she starts chasing. Not because you're unavailable, but because you're immovable. You're no longer trying to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. And that's the most attractive energy a man can carry.